Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who's ready for a brutal episode. It's Joey Lewandowski.
I don't know a brutal episode, but I mean, well, yeah, I mean, different kind of brutal, maybe different than the brutal you're maybe known for in your film tastes.
I'm ready to talk about some brutalist architecture, my friend.
Oh, I thought you were making like emotionally brutal, but
No, because
brutal is
remember that scene in this movie where she says something and he goes, "Oh, that's brutal." When John Cho says that, he's making an architecture joke. And my poor students, since I started teaching that at college in 2018, have had to watch this movie. And then I make them go location scout. I'm like, you have no money. You need to find a cool location to shoot in front of so you have good production design for cheap. Go. And I give them the Columbus treatment. And so I always, in every production design class I'm in, every lighting and camera class, I teach my students about that. I also teach them about ensemble staging and the power of wide shots when you don't have much time. He shot this movie in 18 days, the maniac. Oh. So I teach. So this movie, my poor students have been inundated with it since 2018.
Do they on average like this movie or no? I can't imagine that they would. Like most, like what, how old are the kids you teach? Like 18, 19, 20?
No, I have someone like that are in their 30s, 20s.
Okay, so maybe.
Here's the thing, like it's like anywhere you go, you sit 10 people down, there's probably one or two that love it.
Yeah.
3 or 4 they're like, it was cool, and 4 that are just like falling asleep. But the ones who do love it, and basically what I do is I try to lecture them like, guys, this is a very smart movie. A video essayist made this movie. He made essays about Ozu and about Wes Anderson, and then he goes and makes this beautiful looking film. And even if you don't like it, pay attention to the staging, pay attention to where they stand, pay attention to the symmetry of this. Like, find an awesome location, shoot in front of it for free. Like, there's free production design. And one of my students went and she made a $0 music video. Like, looks awesome, like all concrete heavy. That's like sweet. Very brutalist, badass. Like, I'm not saying it's me, but I was like, go location scout, do it for free. And yeah, no, so I'm just happy. I mean, I've been like, Mitch Hedberg makes a joke where he's like, I pinch my microphone cable when I let it go, a bunch of jokes come out. Like, that was me. This is me with Columbus since 2017. So I'm glad when you sent me the big list of Joey that this was on there, so I had to pick it.
Yeah, like, when I started doing podcasts on the Cage Club Podcast Network, cageclub.me, go check it out. Mark's been on a bunch of our shows.
Freaking
Too Fast, Too Forever. We started doing different actors and, like, actors that we like, but, like, actors that you like don't always make movies that you like. And we've watched a lot of bad movies for different podcasts. And so then when Joe and I started Too Fast, Too Forever, we're like, what if we only watch movies that we like? And, like, it doesn't work exactly, but, like, that's still adhering to a theme. So when you were like, hey, I want you to be a guest on the show more often, I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? He's like, no, and you said to me, I want you to send me a list. And I'm like, oh, like, this is so very really anytime that I'm on the show, we're talking about a movie that, like, might be my favorite movie. Like, this might be my favorite movie. Like, I think this is the perfect movie. I think this might be like even though grammatically it doesn't make sense, I think this might be the most perfect movie. I think this movie is so beautiful. Like, it hurts my heart to watch this movie. Like, I love this movie so much. And I also know that most people I talk to about movies probably wouldn't like this movie.
It's subtle.
Yeah.
You need that flavor explosion.
When it's, you use a little bit less because the flavor is better and it'll last longer, right? And tastes better. Just, I love this movie so much. Like, it is just so good. And I don't remember how I heard about it. Like, I think I'd seen some of his video essays, but it wasn't like he was like one of my guys. But then I remember like other people getting excited, like, oh, Kogonada's gonna make his first movie. I'm like, oh, okay. And I watched it, was like, oh my God, this is so good. And, like, I love After Yang. I think After Yang is also like almost perfect, but like, I mean, and like and when I say that, I mean, like, After Yang is better than almost every other movie that I've seen, but like, there's something about Columbus that just, man, I love this movie so much.
It's kind of like the Sofia Coppola aspect, like the Wes Anderson, the Kogonada, the Jeff Nichols effect for me. Like, I love their early stuff, like Bottle Rocket. I love Shotgun Stories. I love Virgin Suicides. Like, I like when directors make their first film because there's just more emotion tied to it. Yeah. They're not fully them yet. Yep. They're still very raw, and so they still have that first time filmmaker kind of rawness with the monologues and the talks and the shots, and those are what really appeal to me. And listen, like, I've loved this movie for a very long time, and I've always loved the cinematography. I've loved the Haley Liu is great,
love her.
John Cho is incredible, Parker Posey's my girl. Kogonada is great, Elisha Christian, wonderful DP. The shots are so well thought out, and what I like about this movie is after researching it, and one of the things I love most about Jeff Nichols is his appreciation of people in the South and in the Midwest. They're not a bunch of, dipshits.
Right.
They're not a bunch of like, oh dang. Like he's a product of the Midwest, Kogonada, and his characters in this movie, especially Haley Lu, they are inquisitive, smart, kind. You look at Culkin, like Gabriel, like he's a smart kid, he's a funny kid. These are smart people. They're in a mecca of architecture. There's no disrespect there. There's no king of the hillsisms. This is, I've been to many small towns, man, in like Iowa. My jobs are cool because I've had to travel. And
Yep.
so you end up in these smaller areas and you just find culture everywhere, dude. There's culture everywhere. And so to stereotype one area is stupid. And then also just watching the cinematography in front of the architecture is like, hey, I don't have much money. I don't have much time. I'm going to take two awesome actors. I'm going to put them in front of something beautiful piece of brutalist architecture. I'm going to put them into a staircase that goes nowhere, and I'm just going to have them talk and deliver wide shots that allow them to breathe. In the commentary, John Cho and Haley Richardson were like, we could breathe with this. Like when we delivered our dialogue, we could breathe. And John Cho's like, it wasn't over edited. And I think there wasn't all the bogus coverage, and they had space to have a conversation. And I think every independent filmmaker should watch and read about this movie. If someone said, Mark, give me a starter pack of movies that would help me get a movie started, I would recommend Columbus. It'd probably be top 2 or 3. So it's just a movie I really admire. And also reading about it, they shot it on the RE Mini, which means that they can capture like really great footage in low light without bumping up the gain and putting a lot of noise in the picture. They also use some really cool lenses, which I started to research. They had let's see, they had Coke lenses and like Cook lenses, and like what's cool about them is like they you could shoot with a low f-stop. You could have it wide open, and you didn't have to worry about a lot of glare or distortion, like anything like lens flares. So they picked the perfect camera, they picked the perfect lens, they picked the perfect city, they picked the perfect actors. They knew that they wanted height, they knew that they wanted buildings to have scale, so they shot at 185 to 1, like 185. Like everything about this movie was thought about, and those are my favorite movies when I can just see that the filmmaker thought about something. And that was a long speech, but
no, I think it's
I love
like
this movie.
I had no idea. Like when I gave you my list, like I gave you like probably 40 or 50 movies, and like I don't know which of those you've seen, which of those you haven't seen, which of those you love, which of those you hate, which of those you'll never pick because you don't want to talk about the movie or think about a certain movie ever again. You know what I mean? Like, and I love that you love this movie, and I also just think I think there's something, especially that I'd probably thought about but never really fully articulated in my brain until you sent me that interview, where it's like I think there is definitely something to the idea of someone who not only watches movies and loves movies, but like watches movies and loves movies to tell their own stories within those movies, like cutting down his video essays and then being like having the confidence, not like the braggadocio, but like having the confidence to be like, I think I could do this too, and then to go out and do it. And I think that I read an interview with, or I read an interview with, I mean, I read a headline about an interview with Daniel Radcliffe, who was talking, he just made that documentary about like, that stunt double on the Harry Potter movies. And he was talking about how he's like, oh, I thought I could direct a movie. Like I've been on so many movie sets or whatever. He's like, I couldn't do it. And I think that there's something like really valuable to that too, which is like, oh, not everybody knows how to do this, but I think if you surround yourself with the right people, like the right cinematographer and the right actors, and you have a vision, like if you watch good movies and watch good movies with a careful eye to really articulate what you love about them and what makes them special, I don't think it's a surprise that you're also able to make something beautiful yourself.
You're 100% correct. And he also, what's interesting, he had been around movies for so long and thought about them for so long that he avoided a lot of the precociousness and falsities and like big speeches that like, you watch a movie and they're like, oh, like there's a big theme. Like if the gas mask, not the gas mask, if the mask from an airplane falls when we're crashing and you grab it to put it on the person's head, you're in love. And then that comebacks later. That's a first time filmmaker thing. He doesn't really have that in this. Nope. Like there's really not a lot. There's really no big 3-act structure. And, there's a lot of really bold choices that never feel precocious or like cute. There's no cute. Like when they cut the dialogue off from the two of them talking.
It's so good, man.
That's for a reason. Like, I watch Cocaine Bear, and there's a shot where like they take this camera and then they do go upside down with it to like follow a truck. There's no point to it. And I guarantee on set, they're like, hey, that would look cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hate that shit. And it's this movie doesn't have that. Every choice that he makes sense. And
I think those things. What I think also works is that I mean he's I think he's largely existing outside of the studio system. Like this is an independent movie. I think right. Like this is
there's
not
like
like
43 producers.
yeah. Like I think he's able to like he has the confidence to do that, but he's also not. I think like a director who's made like 10 or 12 movies might be afraid to not play dialogue, right? But he's just like, no, you don't need to hear. Like you know what she's saying, or or it doesn't matter what she's saying. And there's like multiple times where like they cut to like, there's oh man, there's the shot where she brings in the building. He's like, tell me what you love about this. And she like, says some
Oh,
facts about it.
yeah.
He's like, no, what do you love about it? And she like says some more facts. She's like, no, like what does it speak to you? And then as soon as she starts to say it, like we cut inside, you don't hear a single thing she says. That's so good. But like that makes sense. And then there's like, because we're on the other side of the glass and it makes sense that we don't hear her. But then like later, she's talking to Rory Culkin. Which Culkin is it? Rory Culkin. And like we're like near them and we just don't hear them either. But because it doesn't matter. Like we don't need to hear them. And they're just like, there's reasons, like there's actual like diegetic reasons why you hear things, and then sometimes just like you don't need to worry about it. Just like you're outside, and it's like, oh man, like he's so good, man. He's so good.
And I also love what he had to say about criticism, his film criticism after making this movie. And I know everyone's heard about it if you've listened to this podcast in the past, but I spent years of my life on sets. I worked on at least 150 of them, not counting extras and being an extra and being a stand-in. I guess I could chuck those in maybe like 175, 180. And it's really affected how I review movies. And if you've been listening to Movie Social Flicks, or if you've talked to me on your podcast, or you've had me, Joey, like I have a very hard time. I don't know. Like I don't want to just have an opinion on a movie, like watch it and then be like, this movie's not good. Or
Mm,
this movie didn't meet what I wanted. Like I don't really care about my opinion when it comes to these films, because if I write a review, I just want to share what I like about it, the camera work, the costume design, all of that. And so that's why I think I'm a terrible movie critic. Not terrible, but I just don't like writing reviews because it takes me too long.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't I don't have that flowing poetry
Mm-mm.
that to just recap a film. I don't have the time to recap a film.
I also like I do think not to because I'm not good at it either. I think reviewing films is an art, and I think the balance between recap and criticism and perspective and whatever is very difficult. And I hate recap. I hate recap so much. Like I don't give a shit what goes on. Like I'm gonna see the movie or I'm not. Like I don't need to know. Like me personally, I don't need to know what it's about. I want to know why you love it, and I want to know why it speaks to you. Like that's why I really again not to blow smoke up your ass or whatever,
Oh
but like
no.
when you're like five thoughts about whatever, and then just like cool jet ski fights. I'm just like yeah, I'd rather see that at like a list of five things on Twitter than be like well, in the second act, when Jason Statham, goes underground, it's just like I don't care, man. Like, does he fuck up a shark on a jet ski? Yeah, cool. I'm gonna go see the Meg 2, The Trench, and I'm not gonna like a lot of it, but then when that happens, I'll be like, this is good.
And yeah, man, like I don't know. I work better with my thoughts. I work better with I don't want to be that opinion guy, because I feel like
Mm,
when you're that opinion guy, you just get bigger and bigger opinions and then you just blow up. And but also too, man, like I worked on a Billy Bob Thornton movie that everyone thought was going to win an Oscar. Everyone's like, they're like, when Billy Bob has won best picture for this movie. It was called James Mansfield's Car, one of the best experiences of my
okay.
working career. Everyone was like, this is going to win an Oscar. I worked on an indie movie that blew $250,000, never saw the light of day. I worked on a movie that was shot with two 5Ds, $25,000. I put a plant in the background of every shot because I'm an idiot, and it was fine. But he never recouped his money. It's so just sit there and just watch a movie.
Hmm.
In the amount of content that you have nowadays to watch, you can barely immerse yourself in the experience, and then they go hammer out a review in 2 hours. You're not thinking about it. And
Well, that's
I
what's
think
also like that's the other thing. So like as we're recording, so I don't know when it's going to come out, but like Napoleon just hit theaters, and Napoleon, I read like one of my favorite film critics is David Ehrlich, and he said Napoleon, he saw Napoleon at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday or whatever. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. The deadline, like the embargo was 7 p.m., which means that the site was
mm,
going to publish at 7 p.m., which means he got out of the movie theater at like 3:40 and had to have the finished published piece done in 3 hours. It's like, okay, so you just have no time. It seems insane that people like look at that and be like, oh, he gave it 2.5 stars. I'm not going to go see it. Like they don't read the review. They don't read it. It's just like that. It's a crazy, crazy system.
and people have talked about our film criticism becoming worse, but I also think there were less movies back in the day. So people had more time to sit on the reviews, to think about the reviews, and to write them. Nowadays, some people are turning out 15 reviews a week, and so
Yeah.
you're not thinking about it. And I guess that's tough for me because I just know every angle on a film set. I've worked on what, like maybe six movies that had like $150 million budgets. Like, so I've been up and down, seen it all. And so it's hard for me to just sit down and be like, this sucks.
Yep.
Or it's hard for, like, this, I would rather just look at it in context. And I know this has nothing to do with Columbus, even though it does. I mean, talking about art and where Kogonada came from, and where he is after this movie. But it I just appreciate his journey, man, because he started off with video essays. I started off with dumb data articles. I'm not a filmmaker who's renowned by the, loved around the world, but I feel a little bit of a kinship with him because we found outdoor ways to, like, I'm much smaller than he is, but like, I like that he started video essays and then he worked his way up to directing and making very
Yeah.
good movies.
Yeah.
And I like people that start outside the system. I like people that find unique angles to do it and then excel. So I've always rooted for the guy and I cheer for him. And I always hope that he finds success because he thinks about movies and I like his take. And yeah, I dig it. He's cool. And yeah, I love Columbus. I love After Yang. And I can't wait to see I hope he does Deep Blue Sea 4. Who knows?
Can you imagine? There wasn't any sharks, but they talked about sharks. There was the idea of sharks. They looked at
Whoa,
water for a while. There's a shark in the water.
that's the greatest movie I've ever heard of.
Mm.
Oh man. But also, I guess maybe the cutest thing that this movie comes up with is the use of primary colors. Like, you go into an office and there's absurd amount of sticky notes.
Yep.
You go everywhere, there's red chairs. And I think that's all about creating a visual palette. So then you aren't taken out of the movie when you do see strong red, yellow, blue. But I would say that's probably the cutest thing and probably not the most necessary thing. But also, it's part of the color palette. And he creates a color palette that keeps you in the movie, doesn't distract. But that's about it. Like, I like the
But
primary
also,
color.
like, when you go outside, it's like the greenest movie that's ever been made. Like, there's so much green.
Yeah.
There's so much green. And it's
And
so green.
And it's not like Baby Driver with all the laundry and the laundromat going back and forth, all the primary colors, which I still kind of like. That's a ballsy move. But it's, yeah, no, I and also too, Haley Lu Richardson. I was a fan of hers when this movie came out. John Cho, I've always been a big fan of. And just to watch them exist and talk, and they don't really have a liberal arts, they don't have a garden state, they don't have a before sunset, before sunrise. They have their own thing, and it's just cool. I don't care if this movie's
Well, like,
cool.
I was thinking about it, like, this time, and I think, like, what I like about this movie is that, I like a slice of life movie, because you can watch this movie, be like, nothing happens. It's like, yeah, nothing kind of happens, but also, like, they both make big decisions to, like, leave or to stay, right? I think what's special, because you think about, like, why are you telling the story? Like, what is it? And, like, it's John Cho's arrival to Columbus, Indiana, that really, like, is what we're, it's his father falling ill, then him showing up and, like, meeting Haley Lu and whatever. But for her, it's just like she's just hanging. And I feel like there's something so real and natural and earned by her performance of, like, being in a place because you feel like you have to be in a place and you can't possibly leave, and people depend on you too much, and you have to sacrifice your own life to make sure that someone else lives their life. And you're like, I could be a librarian. It's like, you don't want to be a librarian. Like, what are you doing? You're something else. Like, not that, like, that's bad, but, like, that's not you. Like, that's not you. And I feel like her internal angst, like, not like, she's not like, I mean, aside from the dancing, which is incredible, but, like, she's so contained for so much of this. And I think it's just so believable. And, like, she's screaming inside all the time, and, like, she's, like, freaking out and calling her mom and calling her mom's coworkers and whatever, but, like, it's all so quiet, but she is dying. And I think that it's like the slice of life that she is, that she finally takes action at the end, but, like, for most of this movie she's just kind of, like, there, and she does so much without really, like,
Well,
she's so good.
It sounds like she went through kind of hell with her mom, and I think that a lot of kids whose parents are into addiction, or a lot of parents who have a lot of issues, the kids begin to have, like, a lot of empathy. They become the grown-ups. They're the ones who are looking after their parents. They put themselves secondary because you're a child and you have to take care of an adult. So I think when everyone's telling her she's fine and she needs to go, and she's like, you can do better, and she's like, do better than what? Like, I think she needed to move on. It's
Yes.
and I don't think characters understood that about her because when you're in those types of relationships, when your parents are into addiction or that, a lot of mental, verbal, psychological abuse comes from that. And so she was probably in this really empathetic place. She worried about her mom. She put herself second. She did the shopping. She dropped her off. And
Hmm.
then eventually it sounds like her mom was getting right. But after years of that, you're still in that mindset. So I think she needed a push in the form of John Cho, but it's not unbelievable either. She's not a slacker. She's not Jason Lee from Mallrats.
Right.
This is a kid who has a real reason to be where she is. And everyone keeps telling her how great she is and that she should leave, but you can't tell that to a kid whose mom was an addict and they
Right.
had to take care of him. So it's just another layer of being an interesting character in this movie. She's not the manic pixie dream girl.
Nope.
There's no meet cute. She actually is like, "You speak English?" to John Cho, and it's uncomfortable. Then he's kind of a dick, and then they get along, and it's also kind of cool that we're like they speak truce to each other, but then they just meet up the next day. It's like, I'm never gonna talk to you again. Like, it's a very interesting dynamic. She even argues with Culkin in one scene, and they go hard on each other. And then she's like, I'm hanging out with my mom. And he's like, why? Because I blew you off the other night. But at the end of it, he's like, hey, can I come hang out with you and your mom? She's like,
Hmm.
no. And that's a
Yeah.
cute moment.
It is a
And
cute moment.
I think it's adult. I think these are smart people. And I also think Kogonada is adding themes in here of moms, dads. Like there's this thing where John Cho says he never paused his life for me. And it's reconciling. It's also, I think it's a critique on art. it's a wonderful production design. And yeah, there's a lot in it. The cigarette smoking's bad, and Haley
No, but
Lu
like
admits
also
that.
like it
But
just feels like I think the cigarette smoking, I think the like Rory Culkin, like it's all the life that she would be okay with, but it's not the life that she should live, right? Like
yeah,
she
yeah,
has to get out. And I think that there's something, I don't remember the line verbatim, but it's toward the end when like they're talking about her leaving and she just says, if I go, my mom will be devastated. And like the sort of cliche thing is for John Cho to be like, no, she'll be okay. Like, she raised you right, you helped her out, whatever. And he just goes, instead, in this movie just goes, yeah. And like, it's like, that's not what she needs to hear. But I think it's also exactly what she like, because like, if that's the worst that it is, like her mom is, it's not like she's like never going to see her mom again. She could call her every day. Right. Like, but just like, yeah, she'll be sad.
yeah.
Like what she needs to hear maybe is like the truth. Just like, yeah, she's going to be really sad if you leave. You should still leave. I just love it. She's like it's so the opposite of like everything you expected to be, and just like yeah, hmm
And she can always come back. Like,
hmm
let's say you go have a great whatever, you go back to Columbus and you start teaching.
yep,
Like, it's not saying she's gone forever, but you do need to find yourself. What's interesting? I don't think she was ever able to find herself because she was so worried about her mom.
yeah.
And so, you know, I think she, the way for her to do it now is to go. Like, you have to, and it's gonna suck. It's not gonna be cool. But yeah, once again, it's very believable and it's not insulting. And yeah, I
And
and
you just have to try. I think the whole movie is like you have to try, right? Like
mhm.
at the end when John Cho's talking to Parker Posey and she's like, "Are you here week to week?" Is no, month to month. Like you don't have to be here forever. Like you can be here for a couple months. She could try the thing in New Haven for a couple months, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like I think you can't live your life. You have to live your life. You can't live your life like waiting to like try to, make other people happy or like take care of other people. Like at a certain point, especially when you're younger, like you're taking like care of a parent who like, if you want to think like she did the work, her mom is seemingly better, right? And who knows what's going to happen, but like you gotta go, you gotta try. And then if it doesn't work, go back. But like you can't live your life not knowing, I think.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And if you look at it like Jin, with an N, John Cho, he stays and
Yeah.
but what's interesting? Imagine if he tells Casey to go, then he leaves too.
Yeah.
Like that. So he stays and he's not there forever. He can still translate books from
Yeah.
his swanky apartment or his wonderful B&B.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, look at that B&B. It's I mean, just the shots too, man. There's that scene where he's on the phone and you don't see him, you just see his feet and just the space that they play with in this movie is very annoying,
Man,
and I love it.
there's like the opening of the movie where like they're walking through the house, like there's like the bookshelves and everything. Like Parker Posey's like looking for the professor, like just like every single thing is so immaculate. But the moment like that I really, in terms of like missing his feet, is like you just see him and he's just like poking around his dad's apartment or whatever, and he opens the closet door and his dad's like, maybe World War II military uniform or whatever is hanging there, or Korean War, who knows, right? Like, and he just like speaks to his dad in Korean, like downs a drink. It's just like he has got some unresolved shit he's working through. And, he's not facing the camera. His back is like at least three quarters, if not fully to the camera. And just, it doesn't matter. Like everything is just so like you're in there with him. Like you're sort of voyeuristic on the wall watching this guy go through a thing.
And Kogonada said that he was quoted as, "I knew that I wanted to have make every shot. I knew that I wanted to have every shot count, and I knew that that would mean that I would have to have less coverage. And so when you look at the wide shots, a lot of those are necessary because they had no time.
Hmm.
But also when you're watching him through a door frame, through a hallway, watching that, when you're watching her dance through the car windshield, when when you're watching them from down a hallway or on a park bench or standing in front of that staircase, not only did it help Kogonada achieve beautiful shots and they all told a story and he didn't have to shoot as much coverage, which is insane. I hate so much coverage, but he also makes you the voyeur. You're watching them. It's
Yep.
like an After Sun when
Yep.
you're watching them on the boat. Like you're in on their intimate moments. And I'm being very serious this episode, but this is what the movie deserves. And it's yeah, I like the but you know what though, those shots, they had a reason. Like they weren't just, hey, I got a sweet ass wide shot here, let's
Mm-hmm.
do this. Like they thought. And there's a scene where where John Cho has his arm up on the park bench, and Haley Lu and John talked about this. Like she's like, why'd you have your arm up? He's like, I don't know, but it adds a little sauciness to it. Well, during that scene, the reflection is also in the pond, and like this is like it's just the way that like he shot the reflections and the angles that he shot, they all made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hate movies, man, where not hate, I just dislike movies that don't think things through, or they're like, that shot would look cool,
Right.
or hey, Clerk shot in black and white, I'm gonna shoot in black and white. That's that Yeah, that's Clerk shot in black and white because they had no money, and that was just easier to control the lights with that. Yeah, it's just have a reason, and he had a reason.
I mean, so many of the interior shots are so like claustrophobic in a way that feels like so deeply uncomfortable, but like it's just so good. Like all of the shots in like Haley Lu and her mom's house, where it's like the long, narrow, and like there's just like you see like she's between like two door frames, and just like, oh my God, you are so trapped. And like it's not super subtle, but it's also not like in your face with it. Like if you could obviously miss it, and then you go outside and she just like feels so like free and open. But I also really love you know, like Parker Posey's like teasing him. She's like, oh, you love this girl. You love this girl. And she's so young. She's so young. And she's like, oh, you know, when did you espouse your love to me? Like at 18, 17, whatever. He's like, oh, it's different. And then like a couple scenes later, like they get drunk, maybe, whatever. And they like go back to his place. And then we wake up and they're sleeping separate. Like we have no idea what happened. Like you can kind of assume, but like either way, it doesn't really matter. Like they woke up fully clothed, separate from each other. Like maybe they did something, maybe they didn't. But like the movie's like, that's not what this is about. Like it's just about two people like sharing a moment. Like, do we know a timeline for this movie? Is it like a week? Less than?
that's
It's
great.
not a lot of time.
No, because that's good. But he's in the B&B for a while, then he moves out, and then she probably had to get her stuff in order. She had to turn in, accept the job and find an apartment.
So most of this movie is maybe a couple of days to a week, and then we kind of jump ahead to like, maybe a couple of weeks later or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. But see, they don't even talk to you about that. Like it's
Mm-mm.
very loose. But see, like I think he wanted Columbus to be a character, and he said growing up, his dad would have him look at rocks and branches a certain way, and I think that's what this movie is about. It's just looking at the town, it's looking at them, it's having them deliver their dialogue, it's thinking. When they talk about, that guy says that kids don't have a long attention span, but when he plays video games, he quits because he doesn't like it. That's a very intriguing conversation. Like that's if I'd have heard that in college, you better believe I would have gotten like a Coors Light and talked with my roommate Doug with that about it for like an hour. Then we probably would have drank a case of beer and then watch Love Actually and then take photos of ourselves with a finished case of beer, holding the Lost in Love Actually DVD or Lost in Translation DVD, Yeah, that was yeah, it was I was a weird guy. I was like 250. I had huge sideburns. I could bench 350, but I was obsessed with movies like Lost in Translation and Love Actually, and I confused a lot of people, Joey. But it's yeah, yeah, you can have the conversations about this. Like, was that meant to be art? You know, when they talk about the brutalists, when he says that and you get it, you're like, oh, that's awesome. You know, just when he brings up religions or like monarchies, they're too easy to exploit. There's like I don't know. It asks a lot of questions, but they're good questions.
Yeah.
And when I loved when he said that, like religions are like monarchies, they're easy to exploit, and that's true, man. Like people have weaponized religion for years, and that doesn't mean that all religions are bad or everyone who follows a religion. He's not saying that. He's just saying it can be weaponized. It can be utilized, and it's just such a mature thing to talk about. And what's kind of crazy too was once they got the money, he's like, we had weeks to get everything together before we started shooting the film. So it sounded like they got the money fast. He was prepped, but then they just had to go and shoot. And imagine how stressful that is for Kogonada, because if you and I were just making a movie called like, Jump Kick Rick, and it was just like a pile of shit, and we're just, hoping to get on Tubi, there's less pressure. But this is a video essayist
Yeah.
making a film in the architecture mecca, in an architecture mecca that's like top 5 on most lists, probably pound for pound, maybe the strongest, and then your movie sucks. So imagine the stress. I want to see Jump Kick Rick now, by the way, but imagine the stress on your shoulders of being this, quote unquote filmmaker, deep thinker who looks at things, and then your movie is bad. So the amount of stress to get this done in 18 days is really impressive, man. And Haley Lu and John Cho never said that. Like they talked about how this movie made them feel like they were soaring, literally soaring. Haley Lu said she watched it 5 times, and so to be a first time feature filmmaker coming off the pedigree of working with the Criterion Channel and making a movie that the producer said would be in a museum before it was on Netflix. That's stressful, dude. But he knocks it out the park.
I do get the sense, and I didn't really think about this until you were talking about Jump Kick Rick and Kogonada, but I feel like nobody wants to make a bad thing, right? Like nobody wants to make bad art, but I do feel like, again, knowing very, very little about Kogonada, like just basically knowing like him through the art that he has made, I think he would have been especially bummed if this movie was no good. Like, like just like, oh man, like, spending all the time watching like the Masters and like doing things about Ozu and Wes Anderson and Tarantino and all the different people who are like people are like, these are the best to ever do it, right? And then he's like, I can do it, and then he makes something just like, oh man, this is lousy, like this is no good. Like he would have been, I think, especially bummed. And so I'm glad for him, for all of us, but especially for him, that this movie is good, because if this movie were bad, like I'd be like, oh man, like you tried, buddy. But I also think like what's really cool is that like based on the types of movies that he makes and the types of stories that he tells and the way that he makes movies and how thoughtful he seems about everything, like this movie came out in 2017. After Yang was 2021. Like it feels like he's the kind of guy who, like, if he makes more movies, and I don't know if he's working on stuff, but like getting one every 4 or 5 years feels right, and it also feels like everyone is going to be very special.
And do you know why this movie didn't fail? I have many reasons why this movie didn't fail. And I think you watch movies that fail, and I love learning about them. They're either a blank check movie where the directors had just carte blanche to just do it. There was no oversight and they overstepped. Or there's movies that went in without a script. There's reasons why movies fail. But this movie, he hired a line producer that lived in Columbus, which is brilliant. I mean, they take care of the money. They know it. So he had local producers. He hired a DP who thought deeply about the shots. They picked the right camera. They picked the right lenses. John Cho was a pro at this point. Haley Lu was a pro. She was building a solid resume. Beautiful architecture. I mean, you could just plop somebody in front of there and have them talk about, Jump Kick Rick. Like that could have been, the movie could have been them talking about Jump Kick Rick, and it would have been amazing because of the cinematography. Oh man, imagine that movie.
When you title this episode, can you put Jump Kick Rick in the title?
Yes, we should dub it. Just like I'll do Haley Lu, and I'll just talk like this, and you'll be John Cho talking like you, and they'll just be talking about Jump Kick Rick.
Okay.
The entire
Does this building speak to you? She's like, yeah. What does it say? Oh man, this is where Jump Kick Rick was filmed. I just love that movie so much. Oh, that's what they were talking about. No wonder they bonded, because they both love Jump Kick Rick.
Oh man. But see, that's why the movie didn't fail, is because he thought about it, and he he talked about how he has hundreds of notepads. He's like, I don't want just an intellectual experience. I want to connect. I want to feel. And also too, like his masters that he studies, Ozu and Wes Anderson, which I do think if you watch a lot of Ozu and then you watch this movie, I think it's kind of like watching, growing up, I watched Tarantino movies, but then I
Mm-hmm.
started watching Sergio Leone movies
Mm-hmm.
and other samurai films, and I went, oh, like he borrowed
That's where I
that
got it
shot.
from.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you watch Tokyo Story, then you watch this, you're like, oh, okay. But this still is enough of itself to not feel like a ripoff. But he thought deeply about the shots. He knew what he wanted. He wasn't, the cigarette smoking. Ozu had cigarette smoking characters, and so does he. But it's not. It's so subtle that you know why this movie works. Holy crap! Because it's subtle. um,
Like the flavor.
yeah, and listen, people are gonna want that crunch. People are gonna want that spice. And this movie isn't that. But it doesn't. He didn't fail because he didn't add a little. He didn't add some relish on top. If he would have added a little chipotle on there or a little, sriracha, this movie might not be as good. But he made all the right decisions. He hired the right people. He had restraint, and he made a successful film. He thought about it. I tell all of my students, I'm like, why'd you take that picture? So I'm teaching camera and lighting right now. And I was like, why'd you take that? They're like, I don't know. I just took it. I'm like, you got to think about your shots. Think about your framing. Like, think about it. Like, why take it? And so then they went back out and they thought about their shots. So I made all my students take 50 photos the first day so I could get a feel for how they shoot. And then I could tailor my lessons to each one of them and how they shoot. Cause you can't just treat all these kids the same.
Right.
They're all adults, but I call them kids. But I like to see their styles, but I'm teaching them to think about their shots. And that's what Kogonada does. And he, I don't think I could ever make a movie like this. I am not that sensitive. I don't think I could ever be that upfront with my issues or like my parents or any of that. But I would definitely absolutely recreate all the preparation for this movie if that makes sense. Like I could
Yeah.
never make Columbus, but I could prepare for it in the
You could
same
make a
way.
movie like Columbus that's not similar to Columbus, but made like Columbus was made.
Yeah, exactly, with
Yeah.
thought. And I'm more of like, I feel like I asked you this question. I feel like I'd be more of like a John Singleton or a John McTiernan guy,
Okay.
which I love Wes Anderson, but I could never be Wes Anderson. I love Sofia Coppola, but I could never be Sofia Coppola. I love John Woo, but I could never be John Woo. I don't have melodrama in me. I love Bong Joon-ho, but I could never I love Park Chan-wook, but I'm not as depraved. I love Spike Lee, but I'm not as stylish as him. Like, so for me, Singleton knows cinema. When we talked about him on Four Brothers and Too
Oh, the
Fast.
back
Yeah.
punch.
Yeah. And back punch. But it's he, how much he knows about movies. Like he just knows movies. He knows them inside and out. And McTiernan, right? Like you watch Die Hard, you watch Predator, you watch Red Hunt for October. There's no shots where you're just going, oh man, that's amazing, or it's tilted, or it's Dutched, or it's like they're very their storytelling is very upfront, very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But Singleton was the youngest director ever to be nominated for an Oscar. John McTiernan has bona fide classics under his belt, but they never resorted to the over the topness of a Tarantino. They don't have the emotion of a Wes Anderson, right? They don't have the patience of an Ozu. They're not as insane as Takashi Miike. They're not like Del Toro, like they're not all humans are evil that Del Toro does. Like they're just very straightforward directors, but they've both made classics. And I respect them so much. With also their supporting characters are so strong in their movies, and I love a good supporting character. So I was thinking about this. If I was a filmmaker, I think my movie would most resemble one of theirs, but nowhere near as I'm not saying I would make Boys in the Hood or Die Hard or Predator, but I think people would watch it and be like, that's a good movie. Like that was good. Like they're just, I'm not underselling, overselling. I'm not trying to get a pat on the back, but I feel like I would direct like them. That's what I think
Do
I would
you
be as a
think,
director.
and I mean, I'm sure that they had the opportunity to, maybe they didn't, or maybe they didn't. I just don't know the movies. And I know that, John Singleton's passed away, right? He passed away a while ago. Do you think they ever want, like, I think there's something that, like, how do I want to say this without like insulting them? Like, because I don't mean it as an insult, but like, I think you watch like a big movie like Too Fast, Too Furious, for instance, or Four Brothers, you're like, yeah, that was a good action movie or whatever. Like, there's good stuff in there, but you don't think about it as like, you don't think about it the same way that you would even begin to think about Columbus. Like you have to watch it like a lot. You have to watch it with a very specific mind to be like, oh, he was like actually doing a thing, right? Like you can be like, oh, that was really good for an action, like, you know, kind of like people with the way people talk about Marvel movies or whatever. Like, oh, that was good for a Marvel movie, right? But I wonder if those guys who are very good at what they do, if they desired to, if they strove to do a thing like this, or if they wanted the sort of like kind of the guidelines, the restrictions, the box that Hollywood movie that like when you have a movie that's a 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, $200 million budget, like you can't go do a movie like Columbus, right? Because they like, you know, you need to have explosion, you need to do this, whatever, right? Like making a movie like this is so radically different. I wonder if those guys who are very good filmmakers who like might not be considered that way, like they're not the auteur like the people you listed, like a Wes Anderson or Sofia Coppola, but like they're just making different movies. Like I wonder if they ever wanted to make a movie like those other people did, or if they did and we just don't know about those movies, or they did and I'm not even, you know, I just don't know. Like it's
That's a good point. It all comes down to the person, right? Like, I think Kogonada is a deep thinker.
Mhm.
He was raised to be a deep thinker. You know, I think who else just make Celine Sciamma, right? Portrait of a Lady on
Oh,
Fire, Petite Maman, like she's like
oh, Little
incredible,
Mom.
and you know, oh man, Julia Ducournau from Raw and
Mm.
Titan, like I
Hmm.
think there are people who just look at films differently. I think McTiernan was very jocular, and I think that he was very like meat and potatoes, but his he and Jan de Bont worked incredible magic. You know what's interesting? You watch certain shots in Die Hard,
Yeah.
and there's really nothing fancy about them, but the framing, well, they are fancy, but I would say the composition's not fancy, but the lighting and the look and the idea for the shot is incredible. Like they understand what the story needs, and they you know, Die Hard's an all timer, and you
Yep.
watch it and it's firing on all cylinders, but it's firing on all cylinders with not an overt amount of style.
Right.
It's just good and it's new and it's fresh. Like
Well, I
look at
think, you know, when
like
you were saying before about like being a film critic and like not wanting just to like dunk on movies or whatever, like I think that like to a certain extent, any movie that gets made and shown like feels like a magic trick. Like it shouldn't exist, right? Like even if it's like awful, it's like you still you made a thing, right? Like I haven't made a thing. And like that's sometimes I think about like I can't make fun of a movie. I haven't made a movie. Like I feel like I can't make fun of movies or I can't like nitpick movies until I do it, which I'm never going to do, whatever. And I know that's like a weird way to think about it because like whatever. But like you think about like a movie like a Die Hard, like there's all these Die Hard knockoffs, and I think like what makes Die Hard special is that like it just does everything right, or if not that, it does nothing wrong, right? It's not like you could be like, oh, they screwed this up or whatever, but I still love the movie. It's like, no, like they just did the thing. Like they just made a thing that just works and it's not flashy and it's not fancy and it's whatever, but just it's just solid.
it's they're slightly subversive too because you had Bruce Willis as the lead. You know, Predator, you had the five of the most burly men, you know, the most burly dudes ever, and they just get slaughtered. So the first 42
Yeah.
minutes of the movie make it like a testosterone fest, and then they just get obliterated. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the strongest men on the planet, was treated like a beach ball at like a Matt and Kim concert by the Yautja. Like it's very subversive. Hunt for Red October, the conversations that people have. It's about conversations. It's about smart people in rooms. And so I think John McTiernan was successful because he was sneakily subversive and not overtly subversive. And then, you know, I think Boys in the Hood was so good because Singleton was young, but he was also so he had that young state of mind, but he was also very smart and he knew a lot of movies. And I
Yeah.
think Too Fast, Too Furious is awesome. And like Baby Boy, and like, dude, he's great.
Wait,
Snowfall,
you
man. All
like
my
Too
students,
Fast, Too Furious?
yeah, all my students talk about Snowfall. Like they love Snowfall. So it's these guys really did connect, man. Like they did connect, and they found ways to be award-winning directors who will be revered, but they did so without being like a Kogonada or a John Woo. And that's not an insult to them. That's just the way I think. Like I don't think I could ever have a Pulp Fiction dialogue sequence in a movie I direct. Like it wouldn't feel right. My stuff would have to be very just yeah, it couldn't do it.
Well,
So
also
it's
like there's the thing where if you did that, they'd be like, "Oh, he's just trying to do Tarantino." Like even if it's good, you'd be like, "Oh, Mark loves Tarantino."
yeah, yeah, I just couldn't do it, and I would hate that. So that's, I thought deep about it. Like I really like took some long walks and punch dance and rolled down a cliff like in Hot Rod after punch dancing in a forest.
I
But
think
yeah,
you're like punch dancing. Like Haley Luke basically punch dances in this movie
yeah, she
too.
does. And she was a dancer. She's a dancing background, and she was like, I did a good job because I made it seem like I'm a horrible dancer. So that made me happy. Just her little
And I
grunting.
just
She's
want
like,
to, I just want to talk about how much I love her in Support the
oh
Girls.
yeah, she's so
She's
good, dude.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
In Edge of 17, she's got a small role. She's incredible. Like I haven't seen her in a
Montana
ton of stuff.
Story. Like she's awesome in Montana Story.
Montana. So my two of my big like oversights that I'm going to, one I'm going to watch this month, and then one I still just have to figure out time to watch. But like Unpregnant, I've not seen in Montana Story, and I love her so much. And I'm just like, I have not seen her in a ton of things, but like specifically like this movie and Support the Girls, I'm like, whatever you see, if I don't watch it immediately, I will watch it one day because like I think you are just so good. And
Yeah,
she's like, she's not super flashy. She's very understated in like all those things. Although in Support the Girls, where she like, there's the scene where Regina Hall's character is having like a real tough, I mean, the whole movie she's having a real tough go of it. And she like goes outside and she's like on the phone or whatever. She just struggling. And then Haley Lu like bursts through the exit door and like sets off like the, not like a firecracker, but it's like the confetti machine. She just goes, you're the best and we love you. And it just like pops back inside. I'm like, oh my God, like this girl is the character, the actor, all of it. I'm like, this is so good. So just shout out to Haley Lu with a different actor. I mean, I'm sure this movie still works, but like, man, her and John Cho both in this, I can't imagine anybody else in either of these roles. Like it's their movie.
I typically lose my mind sometimes when actors stand in one place and talk for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But the two of them do it so well because of the stillness of their performances. Like the way they move, the way that they interact, the way that they talk. Like her in general, she's not the most explosive human being on the planet, nor is he. So I think when they have their static deliveries, they work because there is a stillness to the movie, but they understand that. So they both had to like very much so tailor their physicality to the role.
Mm-hmm.
And some actors couldn't do that. Some actors couldn't be so still. Some like, man, I think I would vomit if certain actors were in here delivering this dialogue. I really do, man. So they nail it. They have the talk, and also just John Cho's great. Like I know Kogonada had issues hiring an Asian lead in this. Like he didn't get as much funding as he wanted, but John Cho's perfect in this movie. And but I don't know, it's cool. Like, but yeah, she's great. She gets it, and I'm glad that she kind of went from Edge of 17, the friend who has cheats and with her brother, and then the
Yeah.
bronze, and like the bronze is crazy. What a crazy movie. But yeah, I'm happy to see her move on to something like this. But I think that's why she's so in, like, people want her now. Like they want her in Montana Story. They want her in White Lotus because she brings something different.
Oh, she's so good in White Lotus.
Yeah, she brings something different to the table. And it's like an unpretentious, she's very unpretentious, but she could be in very pretentious films. And I hate the word pretentious, but I can't think of a word. So if you want your movie to seem less pretentious, just put Haley Lu in it.
I second that. I think that like I did not like the White Lotus season 1 very much, but I think like season 2 I liked almost everything about like way more than the first season, but like specifically her character felt real and grounded in a way that like I didn't feel anybody in the first season. Like I know that like that was kind of what they were going for, like kind of like a soapy whatever, but there was something just like so human about what she was doing. I think that just like man, she's just unbelievable.
Yeah, they definitely lost the humanity in the first season. Maybe that's what they wanted, but like just watching Friday Night Lights and Steve's on, and then watching Euphoria just be absolute turds for 10 episodes. And then that one dude with Daddario,
Mm-hmm.
he's,
Mm-hmm.
Obvious Child, the guy from Obvious Child,
Yeah.
just be the worst. And I don't know. I think the best parts of those were the guy who worked at the motel, who was just having a mental break. Like he's the one that you
Oh yeah.
bond with because you're like, I hate all these people. So you kind of de facto like him.
And then season
But
2, like the Italian sex workers were so fun, man. They were the absolute blast.
quite an intro. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm just glad we talked about this, dude.
Yeah.
And I know I went off a long time about John Singleton and
Look,
McTiernan, but that's what I would do.
That's who you are. Like you can't do a podcast of the show without talking about something that's, you can't be serious an entire episode of the show. Like
Too
you just
fast,
gotta,
too furious.
you gotta talk about Florida in some way. And you got the Florida through John Singleton, right? So it's fine.
And I know we haven't talked a lot about a lot of the dialogue. This could turn into like, hey, that shot was great. This shot was great. That reflection was great. They're talking about you could like the whole thing about grad school. Do you have a grad school? Did you have a graduate degree, Joey?
No.
Got it. Like just the whole questions of that. Do you have a degree? Do you not have a degree? I have a grad school degree, so it's kind of fun hearing him talk about different degrees that you can have. And yeah, I don't know. Just this movie really relates to me on multiple levels, and I'm just very happy to talk about it.
Yeah,
because
me
it's
too.
good. It's very good. Now, do you want to do a draft?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do first time directors.
Mm-hmm.
So feature length directors,
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm,
shorts,
mm-hmm,
since
mm-hmm.
2017. And
Mm-hmm.
since you're the guest, I'll let you pick first.
I'll take Columbus. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm not sorry, but I'm taking Columbus.
I'll take After Sun.
So when you said you propositioned this draft, and so there's a couple movies that you're gonna be very upset if you don't get. I'm like, oh, After Sun. Okay, got it. Well, okay, yeah, okay. I'm gonna take Thoroughbreds.
Oh, that's a good one.
Corey Finley. I haven't liked his other stuff since then as much, but Thoroughbreds, man, I love that movie.
That's a good one. And you have that on the list, which I really like that movie. I'm gonna take Past Lives.
Okay. I'm going to take also on my list. I'm gonna take a Shithouse.
Oh, man, I love that kid. That's such a good movie. I like Cha Cha, but man, I connected with that movie. I wish I would have seen that movie in college. I'm gonna take Zach Krieger for Barbarian.
Oh, that's one I forgot. That wasn't on my list, but that's a good one. That's a good one. I'm gonna take. Are we doing 5 each?
Yeah, 5 each.
All right. I'm gonna take Never Going Back by Augustine Frizzell.
Oh,
Talk about Florida dirtbags, man.
Yeah. Dude, Never Going Back. I'm gonna take Bloodshot.
Really? I love it.
Dude, I talk about it. David Cross and I celebrate it every year when it comes out on MFF podcast, so I have to do it.
That was the movie. I think we talked about when we covered it for Too Fast. That movie came out the weekend that we all went into lockdown for COVID, and I had tickets to that and some other movie the night before through AMC A-List, and I literally left my house. It was like Thursday, March 12th, and lockdown was Friday the 13th, and I was like, I'm gonna go see these movies. I'm like, I can't get COVID having seen Bloodshot, even though when I bought my Bloodshot, like I reserved the ticket, I was the only person in the entire theater that was going to see Bloodshot. I'm like, I probably would have been safe, but like, I never would have forgiven myself if I like got COVID on day 1 or day 0 because I saw Bloodshot in theaters. But it's always gonna be with me. I'm gonna take.
I bought it for $25.
I think Joe and I each paid $20 to talk about it very early because we're like,
yeah.
Well, we need the content for Too Fast, so we need to.
I love it. Cross and I, we're going to do it for as many years as we can.
I love it. I love that for you. There are so many more that I want to pick, but I want to, as my 5th and final official pick, I'm going to take Shiva Baby.
Oh, yeah.
By Emma Seligman.
Bottoms? 1980s
Bottoms is so good,
action
man.
movies would be so happy with the C4 usage.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, you have a dope list. Columbus, Thoroughbred, Shithouse, Never Gone Back, and Shiva Baby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have After Sun, Past Lives, Barbarian, Bloodshot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, listen, like we're leaving Jordan Peele for Get Out.
Yeah, I have a list of 5 movies I'm so sad I couldn't take. But take your 5th one, and then I'll give my honorable mentions.
Oh man, you got like Dean Fleischer, you got Frank Kranz for Mass, you have David. Oh man, you have Joe Talbot for The Last Black Man in San Francisco. The Vasta Night is incredible. Corley Farjo for Revenge. Oz Perkins, even though he made Black Coat's Daughter came out in theaters in 2017, but it was made before that, so I don't know if I could count that. I
saw that when it was still called February, which I think was in 2016, maybe.
Give me a second. This is too tough.
So here's my honorable mentions that we have not.
Oh yeah.
And there's a chance that I might have missed one, but Assassination Nation by Sam Levinson. You're talking about Euphoria earlier. Love that movie. Booksmart, Olivia Wilde.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Get Out. You mentioned Jordan Peele. Hereditary, Ari Aster. That's one where I wouldn't take because I like both. Midsummer is one of my favorite movies, and I think I like Beau is Afraid more than Hereditary. But I love Hereditary, but I feel like I would be taking that more for the director than for the movie, even though I love Hereditary. Pig, Michael Sarnowski. Brigsby Bear, Lady Bird, Palm Springs, Reality, the new one, Reality Winner, Sydney Sweeney, Revenge, Kid Detective, Lost Daughter, and War Pony.
Oh my gosh.
So many good first-time directors in the last 5 years, 6 years.
I love it. When people are like, oh, movies aren't great. Like, no, like
Like, no, you're
movies
just
are.
going to theaters and you're seeing shit. There's good movies.
Oh, dude, you know what else? They have JJ Perry for Day Shift. That'd be a good ad.
Ooh.
I love me some Day Shift.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big Day Shifter. Scott Adkins, kitchen fight. You know what? I'm gonna do Day Shift.
Okay.
I don't care. I'm
Sweet.
taking Day Shift. I'm done, but I love Day Shift.
Columbus Shithouse Thoroughbreds never going back shift. Your movies could definitely kick my movie's ass in a fight. But like in terms of oh god, are all five of mine are basically like teen angst. Oh no. Like
Oh wow.
young person angst. Columbus, yes. Shithouse, yes. Thoroughbreds, yes. Never going back, yes. Shiva baby, yes. Oh man, I have a type.
I go from super sensitive to horror to action.
Mm-hmm.
This
I
is
mean,
how
just like every episode of the show.
this movie this movie is like how I play poker.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I play poker, I start off like After Sun and Past Lives, and people are like, man, this guy's good. And then I throw a barbarian out there and like, oh man, this guy's got an edge. And then it's all Bloodshot and Day Shift, and I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was I entered a tournament in Las Vegas once, and I was destroying people, and then I just lost my attention span, and then I just went all out very quickly. But everyone's like, what just happened? Like I steamrolled a few people, and then yeah, I was gone. I was like Icarus, Joey, and I ended with Day Shift. But
But
yeah,
man, what a hand! What a hand you played!
what a hand! What a crazy party! But yeah, this was awesome, man. And as always, listen to Too Fast, Too Forever. Listen to all of well, actually, yeah, drop some plugs, man. So
Yeah, Too Fast, Too Forever. You're the show that you've been on multiple times. You were on recently to talk about what was the most recent episode you were on?
man, I don't know.
Boy, hold on. Well,
It's been
this
too
episode
long.
might come out down the road. You might be on another one by then. I don't know. It's just Too Fast, Too Forever every Tuesday. How to win the lottery every other Thursday. Book club podcast. And just go to cageclub.me, poke around. We got new episodes on there by me and other people almost every day. All pop culture related in one form or another. Cageclub.me, Too Fast, Too Forever, and How to Win the Lottery.
Whew. Crushing it, man.
Thank you.
And you and Joe too, and all your other crews. You got something special going on.
Thank you. It makes me really happy when I see somebody on Twitter who like found one of our shows, like listening, like tweeting about other shows in our network. I'm like, oh, like we actually did like we're not like, we're still small, but like the network thing works. Like people know where else to look. It's like, oh, I like this guest. Like where else can I go? Oh, I can go listen to his show or whatever, right? So
And like you and Aaron are like doing episodes, and then Jay comes on your shows. Like we got it's fun. It's fun. Like the crew is the tree branches are growing. So it's good. It's real
oh,
good.
you
Man.
did Jaws. You did Jaws this year.
Oh yeah. And then you guys came on for Driven.
One of those
Deep Blue
movies
Sea,
is
the
very
podcast.
good.
Yeah.
And the other movie is Jaws.
I just love talking about franchise pick. Stupid Jaws. Jaws is so hard to talk about, dude. It's like
no, that was so much fun. Like when a new friend of mine was like, I want to listen to your podcast. Which one? What should I listen to? And I gave her two choices. I gave her Titanic and I gave her Jaws. And I think she listened to Titanic, no offense. But like those are like, these are two episodes with guests who love the movie, who have so much to say. The movie is good. We had a good time. We enjoyed watching the movie. We enjoyed talking to the guest. Like those are like gold standard, I think, for us. Just like great movies, good conversations. You were so excited to talk about them. So we were so excited to talk about it with you.
I never thought I would. So it's kind of cool to chatting about that movie. So good. I like talking about, you know what? One of the things I love is talking about the all-timer movies, but finding a new angle. John Levengood and I, we did a Predator episode that the Last Action Heroes, they actually like sent us a message and were like, dude, you like found a new way to talk about this movie. And that's what I love, talking about classics.
What was the new way to talk about Predator?
We did, I don't know. Like I have so much content, but we talked about mosquitoes.
Just the new way was just letting Mark talk about Predator.
So John's an entomologist, so we started talking about mosquitoes and giraffes.
Oh, okay.
And t-shirts, and basically we just tried to talk about new things about the movie. But it was cool, man. But hey, thank you for joining me, man. And yeah, I'm sure you'll be back. And then we're doing Shithouse next.
Love it.
Yeah, this is good. I gotta pull up your list again. All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer. For Joey Lewandowski, this is Movie Stills and Flicks. We'll see you next week.